Hi all, this is lecture 12 on section 3.3 where we're going to talk about lines. So what we want to do is we want to talk a little bit about the graphs and the equations of lines and how those things are related. So what I mean by that is when we graph something that is a straight line, so 2 points, and a straight line that connects those 2 points, okay? Now, some things that are important to talk about here. So you notice that when I drew that, I actually drew the x-intercept, right, where that graph crossed the x-axis, and the y-intercept. So this is the y-intercept, and this is the x-intercept. Okay. And I use those 2 points to graph it. The other thing that's important to talk about is the idea of the slope. So the slope of a line is very important. It is probably the most important thing about the line itself. And we talk about the line being the slope of the line has to do with how steep it is, the angle, with, if you will, at which that happens. So what we do in order to look at that, what we do is we look at the change in the y. So how high I go between 2 points, and then the run. So this is the rise and the run, right? Now, these are both going to be positive because my rise goes up, right? It's a rise. And the run runs in the positive direction to the right. If I were to go in the opposite direction, I could take a line whose rise is negative, meaning it goes down. And then its run can also be negative and go to the left, okay? But that's what we mean when we mean the slope. So the slope, which we use M for, is the rise over the run. Okay. Now, how do we calculate that when we're given 2 points? So when we're given 2 points, x1, y1, and x2, y2, we find the slope by subtracting the y value. So I want the change in the y, so that's y2, minus y1, right, which we sometimes represent change with delta, so that's change in y, over x2 minus x1, which we also call the change in x, right? Delta x, okay? That is our slope formula, okay? That's how we calculate slope. And then in order to write an equation, there are 2 ways to write an equation of a line. The first is to write an equation of a line using that slope. So the slope goes here, multiplies my x value. Same thing down here for slope intercept. My slope is going to multiply my x. But in the second one, in slope intercept form, we use the y-intercept. So B here is the y-intercept, okay? Whereas up here, we can use any point we want where we put the x value here and the y value here. So that's why it's point and slope form, because it's any point you want and the slope. And we can put it in slope intercept by using our slope and our y-intercept. Okay, now we can also find the y-intercept if we're given a random point, and we'll show you how to do that in a little bit. Okay, so let's take a look at some examples, and we're going to look at their slopes and their intercepts. So in this one looks very much like slope intercept form, okay, where my slope is what's sitting in front of the parentheses with the x. So that's this negative, and when there's not a number, we're going to say that our slope is -1, okay. Then our point, right, we use the x and the y value. So this one and this one is the x value. Now be careful here, because just like in the circle, these negative signs are built into the form. So in order to find my x value here, I need to write it with a minus sign. So y minus 4 is equal to -1 times x minus -6. Okay, that way, if I distribute the minus the negative, that's the same as +6. And that way, now you can see my slope is -1, and 4 is my y, -6 is my x. And so that means the point here is -6, 4. The other way to do that is to set the part in parentheses and the part with the y, each of those equal to 0, and that'll get your x and your y coordinate for that point. Okay, now how can I use that to graph? So if I go ahead and I'm going to start by plotting that point. So I'm going to go to -6, 4. So I'm going to start right here. And then to use the slope, m equals -1, is -1/1, and that is your rise over your run. So that means a -1 rise means I'm going to go down 1. A positive run means I'm going to the right one. So I'm going to go down 1, right 1, and that's where my next point is. And let's see if we can be a little bit better, a little more accurate. How about here? Then down 1, right 1, I would be here. Down 1, right 1, I would be here. Down 1, right 1, I would be here. And so here is my line. Okay. Notice the negative slope. It's pointing down as we go from left to right. Okay. Now let's take a look at number 2. This one does not appear to be in any type of form that we have up above. So we're going to go ahead and turn it into one of those forms. And the easiest way to do that is to solve for y. So let's go ahead and subtract the 4x. So -4x plus 9. Whoops. And then we're going to divide everything by 3. And that will give us y equals -4/3 times x plus 9/3 is 3. Okay. Now, this one is close to our point, our slope-intercept form. So our slope is going to be this number in front of our x. And then the number being added is our b. That's our y-intercept. So I use this. So my slope is -4/3. And that's your rise over your run. And then the 3 is your b. So when b equals 3, this means we're using the point 0, 3. So if I draw my axes, I want 0, 3. So that's 1, 2, 3. So right here is my y-intercept. And then I'm going to use that rise and run. Okay, so -4 is my rise. So that means I'm going down 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And right 3. 1, 2, 3. And here's my next point. And I only really need 2 of them to be able to connect it. Okay, again, the slope is negative, so it's going down as we look at it from left to right. For number 3, this one's already in our format, so we can pick out our slope is the number in front of the x, and our b is this number being added. So our slope is 1/2, and that's our rise over our run. And b equals -3. That is our y-intercept. So 0, -3 is our point. Okay. So this is like a set of directions that says start at -3 on the y-axis. So 1, 2, 3. We're going to start down here. And then rise means we're going up 1. Run means we're going to the right 2. So up 1, right 2. Up 1, right 2. Up 1, right 2. Okay. Notice that your slope is positive and this one is going up, right? Also, we can take a look at, notice that the fractional slope, when my slope was 1/2, it's much flatter than a slope that is over 1. Look how much steeper than the 4/3 is, just in kind of how close it is to vertical, okay? All right, so let's take a look at this one. So again, we're going to pick out our slope, which is, well, first, before we do that, this does not look like one of our forms. So I do have the number times the x minus a number, but this 5 is in the wrong spot. So let's move that over and make it y minus 5 is 2 times x minus 2. Then it's in the right format, and this looks like our point slope form. So our slope is the thing sitting in front of the x minus 2. And our point is the 2 and the 5. So this means that our slope is 2. And I'm going to write it as a fraction. So 2/1. And that's your rise over your run. And then your point here is 2, 5. Okay, so when we graph, we're going to start from that 2, 5. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right here's my starting point. And then I'm going to use that 2 and the 1. So I'm going to rise 2, so up 2, right 1. So my next point is over here. Up 2, over 1, up here. Okay, and connect it up. You only need a couple of points to kind of get the idea of where your line is. Again, positive slope, so we're going up left to right. A number bigger than 1, so it's pretty steep. The larger number you get for slope above 1, the more vertical your line will be. Okay. All right, number 5. This one doesn't at all look like our point slope form. Maybe I could factor or do some crazy stuff, but I don't want to do that. So let's go ahead and solve for y here to get it into slope intercept form. So I'm going to go ahead and add the 6 to both sides. That will give me 7y is x plus 7. And then let's divide everything by 7. So that will give me y equals 1 over 7 times x plus 1. This is in our slope intercept form. So that means that our slope is the number in front of the x, and our b, our intercept, is the plus 1. And so then what we have here is that m is 1 over 7, and that's your rise over your run. And your b is 1, which means we have the point 0, comma 1. Okay. So when whoa, sorry about that, friends. Let me find my spot. There we go. Okay, so now let's go ahead and graph, find our coordinate plane. And I'm starting at 0, 1, so up here on the y-axis. And we are going up 1, right 7. So up 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Up 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, if I want to reverse this and go the other way, because I'm kind of going off my graph, I would go down 1 to here and left 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I would cross here. Okay. And you can see 1/7 is much closer to 0. It's below 1. And you can see how flat that is. It's much closer to being horizontal. Okay. All right, number 6. Let's solve this one for y. So let's go ahead and divide both sides by 4. And we'll flip it around. So this will give me y equals 1/4 x, right? Get used to pulling the number part away from the x there. And just flip it so it's the way we like it. So 1/4 times x. And here, your slope is the number in front of the x, so 1/4. And this time, I don't have any number added over here. So that means that my intercept's going to be 0. Okay, so that means my slope is 1/4. And that's your rise over your run. And your b is 0 because I'm not adding any number to my x term, which means that I have the point 0, 0. Okay. So that means if we draw our coordinate plane, whoa, we're going to start at the center here, at the origin, and we're going to go up 1, right 4. Up 1, right 4. And that's what we're going to get, right? So again, relatively flat because it is less than 1. And y equals x. I don't have to do anything to solve this. It's already in the proper form. It's y equals. There's no number in front of the x, so I assume that my slope is 1, right? There's a 1 in front of the x. And I have no number added here. And that tells me that my b is going to be 0, so I'm going to have the point 0, 0. And that means that my slope, I'm going to turn that into a fraction, so 1/1. So I'm going to rise 1 and run 1. So we are starting right from the middle, and we are going to up 1 over 1 here. Up 1 over 1 here. And so this one actually cuts your quadrants right in half at a 45-degree angle. Okay. Now, here's an interesting one where we have y equals -2. Now, there's no x's here, right? So I have 0 x's minus 2. And so that means my slope is going to be 0 and my intercept is going to be -2. So my slope is going to be 0 means that this is going to be horizontal, flat, right? If you ski on a slope that is 0, then you are not really going anywhere, right? If you are trying to ski down a slope and the slope has 0 slope, then it's horizontal and you can't really ski across it. Now, no slope would mean it's vertical, okay? And that would be something like a vertical cliff that you would fall down. That's why it's no slope. So a vertical line has no slope. A horizontal line has a 0 slope. And our b is -2. So we have the point 0, -2. So when we go to graph this one, our y value is always -2. And so down here is our point on the y-axis, our intercept, and we want a horizontal line that goes right through there. Okay, so that is your y equals -2. Okay. The opposite of that would be if we had an x equals 8. Okay, in this case, when it's x equal, there is no slope here. Okay, and we have the x value is always 8. So this is vertical. And so I'm going to find the value when x is 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I'm going to draw a vertical line through that point. Okay. If I'm thinking about a point where the x is 8, that's 8 comma anything I want. So pick 0 or whatever you want. So I plotted 8, 0 and draw a vertical line. Okay. Now, if we want to go the other way, we want to write equations giving certain information. So we want to be able to take an equation and we want to be able to graph it. And then we want to be able to take the information about the graph and write an equation of the line. So that's what we're going to do here. Before we get there, we're going to talk about 2 important facts about lines and slopes. And that is that 2 parallel lines. So if I take a coordinate plane and I graph 2 lines that are parallel, as best as I can, right? These 2 lines will never intersect. They're always equidistant. They're going to have the same slope. Okay, so their slopes are the same. And if you have 2 perpendicular lines, meaning you have 2 lines that meet in a 90-degree angle, okay, those have opposite reciprocal slopes. And that means opposite means change the sign, so opposite signs. And reciprocal means flipped over. All right. So 2 opposite reciprocal slopes would be something like 2. So if I had m equals 2, then the perpendicular slope, that little symbol, the upside down T means perpendicular, would be opposite. So that one's positive. So I make mine negative and I flip it over. So 2 over 1 will become 1 over 2. Okay, so those 2 would be opposite reciprocal slopes. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to be able to write the equation of the line as y equals. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to have different criteria here. So let's start with the line passing through 2 points. Okay. In order to use either slope-intercept or point-slope form, you need 2 things. You need a point and you need a slope, okay? The line passing through these 2 points. So I have 2 points, but I don't have a slope. So that's the first thing I'm going to calculate. So my slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So if I do that here, I want the y's first. It's very important that you maintain the same order here. So if I do 5 minus -1, then when I go to do my x's, I have to start with the same one that matches 5. So the -2 is with the 5, so I have to start with the -2 minus the 3. Watch your negative signs here. This is very easy to mix up. This one will become plus, right? So this becomes 6 over -5. So -6 over 5 is my slope. That paired with either one of these points. Now, if you don't, you've got 2 options here. You can either use point slope, so you can just put this in here, right? So option 1 is point slope. This first one I'm going to do using both, and then I'll kind of alternate as I go. So with point slope, we're using y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And I'm going to plug in what I know. So I know that the slope is -6 over 5. The x and the y stay. Okay. And then the x1, y1 is either of the 2 points. Doesn't matter which, it'll come out exactly the same regardless of which you pick. So I'm going to pick the second one. I'm going to use the 3, -1. So my -1 is the y value, so the -1 goes here, and the 3 goes over here. And then if I want to solve it for y, because I want it in y equals, I'm going to go ahead and make this plus, add the opposite, right? And that will give me y plus 1 equals negative, and I'm going to distribute -6 over 5x plus 3 times 6 is 18 over 5. And then we're going to go ahead and solve for y. So we're going to subtract 1 from both sides. So that's going to mean I get y equals -6 over 5x. And 18 over 5 minus 1 is going to give you 13 over 5. Okay, so that's my equation of the line. That's one option. Option 2 is to use slope-intercept. Slope-intercept means we would start with y equals mx plus b. M is always my slope, so my -4/3 goes, no, 6 fifths? 6 fifths. There we go. -6 over 5 goes here. Now, for x and y, I need to find the b. I don't have a b. I don't have an intercept because I don't have one where the x-coordinate is 0. My x-coordinates are not 0. So that means I'm going to choose one of these 2 points and I'm going to plug it in for the x and y in order to find b. So I'm going to, again, use the 3, -1. So that means I'm going to use the 3 for the x and the -1 for the y, and I'm going to solve for that b. So this gives me -1 equals -6 over 5 times 3 plus b. Now, and I should probably simplify it. So that means I'm taking -6 times 3 is -18 over 5 plus b. And then my b, I'm going to go ahead and add 18 over 5 to both sides. When I do that, 18 over 5 minus 1 is 13 over 5. And that b, I plug back in here. Okay, and so that means I'm going to get y equals, I'm going to move it over here because I'm running out of space. Y equals, my m is still the -6 over 5, the x now stays, and my b is 13 over 5. Okay, so they're really the exact same steps. They're going to get you to exactly the same answer, but 2 different options. Okay, from here on out, I'm going to go ahead and just choose one and go for it. Okay. Number 2, we've got a horizontal line through 3, 8. Now, up above, I showed you that x equaled a number was the horizontal line. Y equals a number is the horizontal line. So what we do is we pick out, so the horizontal line means y equals. And so all I'm going to do is go over here and pick out the y and make this y equal to 8. And that is my equation of the line. Okay. You could also alternatively say, okay, a horizontal line has a slope of 0 and my point is 3, 8. And you could put this into either of the 2 formats we just talked about. You're going to end up at the same place with y equal 8. Okay. The vertical line, we know that this has no slope, and a vertical line is always x equals to something. And so all we're going to do is go here to the x coordinate and pick that out and make this be x equals 4. And all right, the last 2 here are going to talk about using parallel and perpendicular. So in number 4, remember we need a slope of the slope of the line and a point. We have the point because they're going to tell us where they want us to put it. And they're going to tell us it's going to be parallel to this one. So we know that parallel lines mean they have the same slope. So if I can figure out the slope of the line they're talking about, then I can use that same slope for my line, okay? Well, in order to do that, we've got to solve that one equal to 0. Set it equal to 0, solve for y, so that we can identify the slope. So I have x minus 4y minus 7 equals 0. I'm going to go ahead and move the x and the constant term to the other side. That's going to give me negative 4y is negative x plus 7. And then I'm going to divide both sides by negative 4. That will give me y equals negative 1 over negative 4 is 1 over 4x. and negative 7 over 4. Now, this number right here will never matter, okay? The intercept for the line that you're parallel to is not important for your line. It's unique to that other line. What we do want, though, is the slope. The slope here is 1/4. So that means I want to use that same slope, but now I'm using that with my point, the 3, negative 2. Okay, I'm going to use point slope form. So that is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And I'm going to plug in my y value is negative 2. My slope is 1/4. And my x1 is 3. So that gives me y plus 2 is 1/4 x minus 3/4. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and subtract 2 from both sides to get it to be y equals. That's 1/4 x, and I'm taking negative 3/4 minus 2. If your fractions are where you're struggling, go ahead and write it out. Minus 2 over 1. I need common denominators. So that is 8 over 4. So negative 3 minus 8 is negative 11 over 4. Okay. We're going to use the same strategy here in number 5, only we're using perpendicular slopes. So we're going to start by taking a look at this one, and we're going to say 3x minus y plus 3 equals 0. And we want to solve for y. So I'm actually going to move the y to the other side. So let's just add y to both sides. And that'll give us 3x plus 3 equals y. And then we could flip it if we want and make it 3x plus 3. Okay. Now, if again, the plus 3, not important here, but I do want to talk about the slope here. So the slope of this line is 3. Okay, not my line. I want to be perpendicular to that slope. So the perpendicular slope that I want is going to be the opposite sign, so negative, because that one's positive. And I'm going to flip the 3 over. So I'm going to make it, instead of 3 over 1, I'm going to make it 1 over 3. And that's my slope that I'm going to use. Okay, and they give me the point 2, negative 5. This time I'll use slope-intercept just because, something different. So y equals mx plus b. Okay, your y is negative 5, your m is negative 1/3, and your x is 2, and you're solving for b. This gives me negative 5 equals negative 2/3 plus b, and we're going to add 2/3 to both sides. And that means that the b here is 2/3 minus 5. But I don't want 5 over 1. I want common denominators here, so I'm going to make it a denominator of 3, so it would have to be 15 over 3. That's going to leave me with negative 13 over 3 equals b. And when I put that all together, y equals, my slope is negative 1/3 x plus the b is negative 13 over 3.